Hello friend, John Dalton here, Further Emergence podcast, where we go into consciousness, love and the mystery. And in this episode we're going to be exploring stopping the cycle, that's the cycle of unconsciousness, listening, overwhelm, humour, the little happiness, and questions about relationships and neurodivergence. But before that, let's have a quick review of the memes on the Further Emergence Instagram feed. I didn't write this one. Yehuda Berg wrote it. And it says, hurt people hurt people. That's how pain patterns get passed on, generation after generation after generation. Break the chain today. Meet anger with sympathy, contempt with compassion, cruelty with kindness, greet grimaces with smiles, forgive and forget about finding fault. Love is the weapon of the future. I don't know about describing love as a weapon, but there's something about it, isn't it? Love is the weapon of the future. Because if you try and use love as a weapon, it's the end of weapons. Because it's not the way love works. Not in my experience anyway. But this idea of hurt people hurt people. I mean, it's a bit of a cliche now, hurt people, but it's true. It's so true, I heard it described by someone as you're sitting in traffic and somebody, runs into you from behind and you get out of your car and you're about to, you're going to give them a piece of your mind. So you get to the car behind you, the car that hit you, and you realize that somebody hit them and you go, oh, okay, well, I'm going to give that person a piece of my mind. And you go to that car and then you realize that car had been hit by somebody else, the car behind it. So you go back to that one and then you look down the line and you can't see the end. You can't see where it started. That's kind of the way it is, because everyone's got issues with their parents. There's a nice sweeping statement for you. We all kind of think, oh, our parents, they could have done such a better job, but then you kind of think, you realize, particularly if you look at any kind of history or any kind of period dramas on TV, you realize what your parents, the level of unconsciousness that your parents were born into and what they were given by their parents. And you go, oh, okay, well, I suppose all things considered, they had a lot more to deal with than I did. And then you think about it's the grandparents' fault. And then you think about what the grandparents had to come through, and you're like, oh, well, I suppose, and it just goes back on and on and on. And really, it comes down to you, unfortunately. It's like, are you going to rear end the person in front of you, or are you going to put the brakes on and stop it? That's what we're all faced with. That's what your parents were faced with. That's what your grandparents were faced with. But they've done their thing. They're different people. Now it's your turn. And I'm not talking about whether you've got kids or not. It doesn't matter whether you've got kids or not. It's like, are you going to pass it forward? Or are you going to absorb it and allow your consciousness to engulf and transform the unconsciousness that was passed on to you? That's what this is saying, Are you going to be a hurt person who hurts other people? Or is it going to stop with you? That's the challenge. And it's very challenging because we've grown up with it. We've been conditioned to pass it forward. And the challenge of our times is to not pass it forward, to transform it, transform your unconsciousness into consciousness. And I suppose that's kind of maybe a way of thinking about love being a weapon of the future. It's not really a weapon of the future. It's not a weapon, but it is the way of the future. It's the answer to the future. You can look at all the problems in the world. They're all made by people, pretty much. Which is terrible, but also it means we have the opportunity to change them. And we've had an experience of how the world can change overnight. We had it 2 or 3 years ago when suddenly we all changed our behaviors all around the world overnight, pretty much. We did things that, people said, we'll never be able to do that, never be able to do that. Now, it was negative. It wasn't great, but it was a demonstration of what we're capable of. So we're capable of doing good things as well. We can change everything overnight. We have that in us to do that. That's where love comes in. Because, this idea of love being the weapon of the future. Why am I harping on this? Because there's something in it, but it's just the wrong word. It's not the weapon of the future. It's the way of the future. And if everyone just was able to focus on love and let love lead them, everybody, I'm talking everybody, then the world would be transformed overnight, or within a few short weeks. It would be a very different place. And it starts with you. And it starts with me. But I'm not in your body listening to these words. You are. So it starts with you. I'm just another little head on a little screen, or maybe a big screen, saying words. But your heart is listening. And it's your heart that's going to move you to do something. It doesn't have to be a big outward act. If it is, that's great. But the hard thing is to do it on the inside, to follow your heart, rather than be angry, be cynical, give up, be fearful. All the really hard stuff to do happens on the inside. But you can do it. I believe in you. You can do it. Next one is brilliant. I didn't write it. I love putting it up though. And it's kind of similar in theme. To be kind is more important than to be right. Many times what people need is not a brilliant mind that speaks, but a special heart that listens. The first sentence in that is the really difficult one. To be kind is more important than to be right, particularly if you are right. You're talking to somebody and they're saying something and they're totally wrong. They're wrong, and you so want to smash them with your knowledge and rightness. But instead you're kind and you listen because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they're saying, meaning you don't have to prove them wrong. You don't have to demonstrate how wrong they are with your fantastic rightness. It's not going to make any difference in this moment. And what they need is to be heard. Even if what they're saying is, in your opinion, very ignorant. It's not easy to do. Not easy at all. And you kind of had the feeling of, yes, but I have to stop this injustice. I have to stop this person's injustice, And it's like, is it really an injustice, or is it just a report about fear, about how afraid they are? Often that's what it is. Often what it is just a report about how afraid they are. Because it's very easy to confuse a report with a question. Often people are just giving you a report on what their reality is like. And they're telling you about how terrible things are and how awful the world is and how terrible things are going to happen and the world is going to blow itself up. That's not a question. That's a report. And it's very easy to kind of feel like, but I have to have my say. I have to give my opinion, and my world is not like that. I think people are lovely, and the world is not going to blow itself up, and there's hope for the future. We're going to get through this. We're going through birth spasms, birth pains. We're transforming as a whole society. That's what I want to say. I want to tell them that. The thing is, if you know that to be true, then you don't have to tell them because it's happening already. And what they need more than you telling them, because if you said that to them, chances are it would be very triggering for them and they would want to prove you wrong and you would want to prove them wrong. And before you know where you are, you're in a fight. You're fighting with the person, trying to beat them into seeing the world the way you do, which is impossible. You can't see the world the way other people see it. You've never looked out of anybody else's eyes. You don't know what's going on with other people. It's all assumption. You're just assuming that they're having the same experience as you. You're assuming they're in the same reality as you. It would be like, wearing a virtual reality headset very close to somebody else, and you're playing one game. I don't play games, but let's say you're playing, what games do I know? Let me see. Grand Theft Auto. I think that's a game. Okay, so let's say they're playing Grand Theft Auto, which by the sounds of it is a pretty violent game. So they're playing that game, and you're playing My Little Pony, the My Little Pony game, or the Smurfs game, or something fluffy and lovely. But you can hear each other. And they're going, "Oh my God! Everyone is attacking me. It's terrible. Yeah, I'm a thief. Grand Theft Auto. I've stolen a car and I'm being chased. I don't know. I've stolen a car. I'm being chased. It's terrible." And you're going, "What are you talking about? It's lovely. It's fluffy rainbows and everyone's so cute and magic." Okay. And you could be arguing with them and they'd be going, "What are you talking about? It's dangerous here. There's people trying to kill me." You're going, "No, they're not. It's moonbeams. It's lovely." That's what it's like talking to other people, in my experience. And the breakdown in communication happens because you both think you're playing the same game. But you're not. Not at all. Totally different games, totally different experiences. And really, the difference between a report and a question is, a report is that person going, "Everyone's trying to kill me, the world's a terrible place," and so on and so forth. That's a report. And you're in your lovely, pippy, fluffy, lovely place going, "Oh, okay. I hear you." And the difference, so that's a report. And then a question would be that person suddenly kind of going, "Why am I so lonely?" And you know that that's a real question. Okay. That's a deep question. You'll feel it in your whole body when somebody actually asks you a question. And it's almost unrelated to the game they're playing. And when someone asks you a question like that, a little window opens up and there's a much better chance of some kind of communication being able to happen, where you can say something and it will get through. But for the rest of the time, it's just a report. It's just a report from their little game. That's why I'm encouraging you to just be kind. And being kind is more important than being right. So hard to do. And doing your best, not to be clever and not to have your say, but to have this special heart that listens. That's a beautiful thing. I did write this, and it was prompted by this picture of a huge haystack. It's not a haystack, it's a hay bale, one of those roundy hay bales with a giant needle in it. And it says, "Sometimes looking inside can feel overwhelming, impossible, like looking for a needle in a haystack. Sometimes the willingness to look is all you need. The resistance creates the difficulty and amplifies it. The willingness to look, to face whatever you may find, discharges the resistance and allows you to see things in perspective. It's not always pretty, but it is full of life." I think the thing to see here is the resistance creates the difficulty and amplifies it. That's the thing that can make it very difficult to look on the inside. Because you sit down to meditate, or you can feel the unpleasant feeling and you're like, "Oh, I don't want to feel this. Where's the drink? Where's the cake? Where's the porn? Where's the drugs? Give me anything. Give me shopping. Give me something just so I don't have to feel this." But the more you distract yourself away from it, the bigger it gets. And it's like, "Oh my God, I need more cake. I need more drugs. I need more booze." And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Whereas when you can just turn and face it, even though that's very difficult, I know, but turn and face it and go, "Okay, I'm going to look. I'm going to look into this as much as it is." It generally gets worse for about 5 minutes. And you're like, "I knew there was a reason I wasn't doing this." And it feels like, I can't bear it. But if you stick with it, just get past that 5 minutes, suddenly you're like, it's not that bad actually. It's bad, but it's not that bad. And the more you look at it, that's like, okay. It's less, it's getting less. And then you kind of go, "I'm beginning to see something here. I'm beginning to see possible reasons for what this is all about." And the more you face it, the more it can begin to evaporate. And that's what it means about, it's not always pretty, but it's full of life. Because on the other side of looking at it, there's more life, more vitality. I didn't write this, but it's very good. Every time you're able to find some humor in a difficult situation, you win. This is so helpful. I take my life and myself very seriously. I don't think I'm on my own. And thankfully, there is a part of me that never lets me take it too seriously. And I'll always see myself taking life too seriously. And in the midst of very intense things, I will find humor. And it's such a gift when you can see it. And every time you do, you win. Because somewhere, there's something in humor. I think God has a great sense of humor. Whatever God is, the big thing that I love. Something, when I can do this, when I can find the humor, it's like an echo of something. It's a simultaneous like humor and relief. It's like a remembering. It's like, oh yeah, it's not so serious. It doesn't matter how serious it is, Like, this isn't directly related, but there's a great story about a Zen monk. It's always a Zen monk, isn't it? So he's going through the jungle, and suddenly he hears some tigers, and he starts running, and he's getting away from them. He's going great, and then he comes to a cliff. It's like, oh no, cliff. But then he sees a vine going over the side of the cliff, so he starts to climb down the vine to get away from the tiger. The tiger's up the top, doing "Arr!" So he's going great. He's climbing down the vine, but then he hears as he's climbing down, the sound of the tiger above is getting less. But then he can hear, but it's also getting louder. And he looks down, and there's 3 tigers at the bottom of the rope as well. And he's like, "Oh no, I'm stuck. I can't go up. I can't go down. What am I going to do? Well, I'll just wait here." And then he looks up the vine, and he sees that a little mouse has come out, and it's gnawing on the vine, and it's starting to chew its way through it, and it's too far. He can't climb up quick enough to stop the mouse from cutting the vine. And he's like, oh no, this is not looking good for me. And then he looks straight ahead of him at the cliff, and he sees some wild strawberries growing in the cliff. And he reaches out, and he can just about grab one, and he puts it in his mouth, and it's the most delicious strawberry he's ever had in his whole life. That's a story. I don't know if it has a happy end or whatever, but it's kind of about living in the moment. But to me, it relates to this thing about finding humor. You got tigers above, tigers below. There's a mouse eating their vine, but it's like in the middle of all that, this humor can cut through, and you can have the most deliciously hilarious moment happen for you. And it just suddenly, that's all that matters. In that moment, that's all that matters. I don't know what happened to the monk. I think it's one of those, like, because it's a Zen monk, it's one of those Zen stories. So there's no end, unfortunately. I didn't write this one. Ardis Whitman wrote it, and it's very good. It says, there are times when it's hard to believe in the future, when we're temporarily just not brave enough. When this happens, concentrate on the present. Cultivate the petit bonheur, the little happiness, until courage returns. Look forward to the beauty of the next moment, the next hour, the promise of a good meal, sleep, a book, a movie, the likelihood that tonight the stars will shine and tomorrow the sun will shine. Sink roots into the present until the strength grows to think about tomorrow. Man, Ardis has definitely been in the trenches, because there's something conveyed in that, where you just you find it hard to believe in the future, and that's where we're at the moment. You see that all around, where it's like, what is going to happen? It's like one crazy thing after another. Even if you don't look at the news, which I don't, but I can still feel it, And it's that thing of like coming back to the moment, in a way, being that monk and looking around for the strawberries, because it's all an illusion. There are no tigers above or below. There is no mouse. There is no vine. There is no cliff. There's just this moment. And if there's a strawberry in front of you in this moment and you savor that strawberry, that's the truth for you. And that's not putting your head in the sand, and it's not ignoring what's going on. It's looking for this treasure in the moment when it presents itself. And if you don't look around, you won't see it. And that's kind of what Artist is saying here. Sink roots into the present until the strength grows. Because that story about the monk doesn't have an end to it, because it's full of potential. Meaning the potentials of what could happen, what did happen for him, are infinite. And similarly, what can happen, even though it seems like there's tigers above and below and the mouse and the whole thing. If you focus on the moment and sink roots into the moment and appreciate what is in front of you and let it nourish you for tomorrow. Beautiful. I don't really have a lot of farm news for you this week. It's just been lovely weather. The people for the sheep came, had a look at the sheep, herded them up a bit, had a little look at them. I don't know what they did. I had a chat with them and they seemed to think all was well. I think they've got to come back and do some shearing. So that was lots of making noises to the sheepdogs, because they come with 2 sheepdogs who run around and herd all the sheep down off the mountain and corral them. And it's all very... I was kind of busy with other things, so I was kind of seeing it out the window and then going out and chatting with them. But it's a lovely older man and his wife come and do it. It was very sweet to see his wife taking these sheep gate things, lifting them off the back of a pickup, kind of a pickup truck they have. Heavy kind of agricultural things. And she was wearing the loveliest pink cardigan. It was completely out of place. But it was lovely to see that she'd, made an effort and had a nice pink cardigan on. And he was wearing a very nice crisp white shirt, which is lovely. Lovely that they were just going to do some sheep stuff, but they still kind of dressed up a bit. I thought that was beautiful. Just a reminder about my weekly friendly notes that I send out on Sundays. If you want to get them, if you go to the website, there's a thing across the bottom that'll encourage you to sign up, or you can just send me an email, John@Further Emergence, or if you want to ask me a question, John@furtheremergence.com, or you do that. I want to remind you about my trainings. I've got 3 different trainings on the website. One is about meditation for growth and consciousness, not like other meditation trainings. It's very good. One for how to deal with the psychic world, which is the natural kind of follow-on, or the unnatural follow-on from meditation, when dealing with psychic entities, possession, all that kind of stuff happens, unfortunately. So knowing how to deal with it, and how to deal with fairies, angels, ascended masters, all that stuff as well. Very helpful to not get distracted, so you can just keep your focus on the mystery, just go straight through. And then there's a masterclass on craniosacral therapy, which is helpful for all forms of therapy, but particularly for craniosacral therapists. And I'm currently putting together another one of those it is kind of craniosacral therapists, but it's more for distance work. So you can see all those on the website, furtheremergence.com. I had a question come in on the Further Emergence Discord. Hi John, any thoughts or experience treating people with ADHD and autism? My sister was diagnosed with ADHD and recently my father was diagnosed with autism. He had a normal, in inverted commas, life, and he doesn't fit the autistic stereotype that we see on TV, people who don't talk, etc. What do you think of all these adults being diagnosed now? I'm hearing about more and more people, and I guess I might be autistic too. Maybe realizing in which spectrum you are helps you know yourself better. Maybe if there are more and more people that accept that they are neurodivergent, it could have an impact on the external world, and it could be little by little more inclusive. Yep, I've lots of experience working with people with ADHD, autism, all the neurodivergent stuff, and the list is long. Let me read you a very quick list. ADHD, that stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. DID and OSDD, that's Dissociative Identity Disorder and other specified dissociative disorder. ASPD, that's Antisocial Personality Disorder. BPD, borderline personality disorder. These are all under the neurodivergent umbrella. NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, dyslexia, PTSD, that's post-traumatic stress disorder, or CPSD, CPTSD, that's complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Dyspraxia, dyscalculia. Dyspraxia is movement, difficulties with movement. Dyscalculia is difficulty with math. Dysgraphia, that's to do with writing. Bipolar, autism, epilepsy, OCD, that's obsessive compulsive disorder. ABI, that's acquired brain injury. Tic disorders, schizophrenia, misphonia, that's difficulties with sound. HPD, that's histrionic personality disorder. Down syndrome and synesthesia. And that's not an exhaustive list, and they're all under the umbrella of neurodivergent. And I'm sure I would have been diagnosed if I was a kid when I was a kid, because when I was a kid, I would sit in a chair and rock back and forward for hours. Loved it. And I remember my mother heard something about autism on the radio. And one of the signs of it was this rocking thing. So as soon as she heard that, anytime I'd start rocking, she'd be like, come here, come, I want to show you something. She'd distract me out of it, But I had a lot of those things, difficulty with math, difficulty writing. And I'm sure I would have been labelled. I mean, I was put in a slow class when I was in school. And it was only... it was to my great shock when I was in my adult life that I took an IQ test. A friend of mine was really interested in joining Mensa, the Society for Higher IQ, and didn't want to go on his own, so asked me if I'd go with him. So I went along thinking, oh, well, this is just going to confirm that I'm slow because I was in the slow class in school. And turns out I have a genius IQ. I couldn't be more shocked. I was invited to join Mensa, so was my friend, I was happy for him as well. But that was a real shock for me, because I had grown up thinking I was stupid because I was put in the slow class. But that's just part of this whole neurodivergent thing, So there's lots of different, like each one of those labels that I read out are different. Each one has got a different flavor to it, different things, different nervous system configuration. And then what's happening is, like with people being diagnosed now, because often what happens is the child will get diagnosed as autistic, and then the parent, being loving parents, they want to research it. They research about, well, what does this mean and how can I help my child? And as they're researching, they're going, hang on a minute, I've got all this stuff as well. It's hang on. And then they go and get themselves tested and they get diagnosed as well. And it depends, I mean, I know when I took a test for social anxiety, I found it very helpful because I scored off the charts. Like I think out of 100%, I got something like 97%. So I was like extreme social anxiety, which I didn't, I thought I was a bit shy when I was growing up, because that's what I was told, and understanding it and understanding that there are different types of social anxiety, and often it's just a wiring issue in your nervous system. And it's not a failing of your character, That was the most helpful information for me, because it meant I just freed up a lot of bandwidth that I didn't have to deal with feeling like there was something wrong with me, and I could just get on with managing myself and helping myself in different situations, And I've continued to kind of gently work away at it, and it's so much less now. I can handle things so much better, and I think kind of doing that test and going, oh, okay, I've got that. So that's very helpful. But it seems like what's happening on a bigger scale is we're slowly realizing that there's no normal, that the idea of normal is not real, that everybody's not the same, and that's okay. And that the idea of that there's a a normal, and then you diverge from that, is getting less and less. And I'd say in time there will be the idea of normal will just become obsolete. That there's a recognition that everybody's way and the way their body is configured, the way their nervous system is configured, the way their brain's configured is different. So, like I read the statistics that in the UK, the incidence of autism has increased 787% in the 20 years since up to 2018. 787%. That's a big increase. And that's not because there's an explosion of autism. What that is they've just got better at seeing it and recognizing it, because there's no blood test for autism. It's observation and behaviors. So that seems like that. You could say there's a 787% increase in recognition, because that's really what's going on. And the whole thing about getting a diagnosis is you really only get a diagnosis if it's a problem for you. Like, you only get a diagnosis from the medical profession if it's a problem for you. So a lot of the diagnosis under that neurodivergent umbrella are self-diagnosis, and that's kind of part of the process, and it's necessary for you to find out about the different things. Like say me with my handwriting, I always thought it was just because I was left-handed or there was something wrong with me. I think I actually have a bit of that dysphonia, or just not dysphonia, dysgraphia, where it's actually just difficult. I think I'm slightly dyslexic as well. I think, as I say, I've got a little bit of a math thing. I'm good at certain kinds of math and terrible at other kinds of math, but at the math that I'm good at, I'm very good at it, So I don't fit, like I said, I don't exactly fit the social anxiety thing. I don't exactly fit the autistic spectrum thing, because when I started seeing people with craniosacral therapy, there was no spectrum. It was just autism. Now it's a spectrum, because they recognize that there's different degrees of it. And I've worked with people who are on the extreme end of the spectrum and on the not so extreme end of the spectrum, and Tourette's and all the other things. It's all part of the beautiful configuration and individuality that people are, and the expressions of who they are and what they're trying to work out in their life. It all goes to help with that, their particular configuration. That's why I'm saying it's part of the process of learning about it yourself and going, that's me. I've got that thing, this self-diagnosis thing, because most people, like in this person's father, they've gone through their whole adult life, and now they've realized they're autistic. It's not a problem for them. So in a way, it's not like they're self-diagnosing, I think I've got a brain tumor. I don't mean it's in that kind of self-diagnosis, but it's part of the process of neurodivergence, of claiming it and managing yourself and helping you to understand it yourself. And the main thing is not to make a badge out of it, and not to define yourself by it. It's just another part of you. But it's when you are in deep dreamless sleep, when you're back in the mystery, all of that is gone. Everything goes. And that's who you are in your purest essence. And that's the thing to remember. It's all part of what you have gathered to you here to help you. Your parents, the country, your ethnicity, your gender, everything. It's all part of it. But also to let it go. That this is the stage, the set, the props, the wardrobe that you've chosen to help you. And then when you leave the theatre, to not be attached to it, not to be defined by it, because none of it is you. It's all part of you, but none of it is you. Another question come in on email. This is in response to one of my friendly notes. Hello, John. As you kindly say that I can drop you a line saying how I am holding on, and just today, by chance, happens to be I'm barely holding on, I decided to write to you and hope that you could shed some light. Just to cut it short, very short, Why should someone have this craving, desire, and need to be in relationship? Is it only company, sex, a bit of both? Is it this feeling of being worthless in a world that can go on without you? I love art and, of course, beauty. It is, I think, our most inner desire to try and capture it in the shape of a painting, drawing, etc. And what on earth does this have to do with relationships? Today I'm pretty lost, and when I read your email, I thought of taking the chance to talk to you. Have a great day. Well, that's great. And I'm so grateful that the person wrote to me and took it's correct. It requires courage to do that. So, chapeau. In that last friendly note, I was talking about what I was talking about last week on the podcast: sex in long-term relationships. So, in terms of the question, what do we need the relationships for? Why do we crave them? Why do we go after them? In my experience, it's for two main kind of reasons. One is about seeing what's possible, and the other is about seeing your unconsciousness. So when you fall in love with somebody and you feel those profound feelings of love, it's almost like discovering a new room inside yourself that you didn't know was there. And without that other person, it's very hard to find that without the other person. The difficulty then is we kind of think we need the other person to feel it, overlooking the fact that the room is inside us and it's there and it has been there the whole time. And all the person did was help us discover it. But you can go into that room anytime. And that can take many, many relationships and having your heart broken many times before you realize, oh, it's all inside me. I never feel these feelings in the other person's body. I only ever feel them in my body. So stands to reason that if I know how to feel these feelings in my body, if I can figure out how to access them without needing the other person, then I'm free to just love somebody because I love them, not because I need them to open up the room for me. So that's one thing. That's why we crave that. It's almost like we're homing pigeons. We have to meet somebody to open the room for us. But then the pitfall is that we think we need that person or another person or something outside ourselves to get the room open, which we don't. You can figure out how to open the room yourself. That's my experience. That's the way it is for me. I'm in the room all the time, regardless of anyone outside me. I feel like I'm deeply in love with somebody all the time, even when I'm completely alone. The other thing is, what relationships do is they highlight our unconsciousness. I can vividly remember going along, doing very well, just long after I got enlightened, and all going well, and I got into a relationship, and within 6 months I was a basket case, absolute basket case. Okay, this was very, very destructive relationship. Okay. Now, I since realized that I had intense attachment issues that I didn't even know about. And this person just managed to highlight them for me. And it was shocking, very shocking to discover this big knot of unconsciousness inside myself and see myself behaving in crazy ways, doing crazy things. I was able to, over time, years, help myself work through them. But without that person, I never would have known that. I never would have known what was going on inside me. Now, it was very painful. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's just a good example of what relationships do, is they highlight unconsciousness for us. So you've got two things going on. And both of them are coming from the depths, the deep parts of you, you need to find someone to help you go deeper into love so that you can discover new depths in love inside yourself. And then, they bring you there the first few times, and then you have to figure out how to find your way through there on your own, if you're lucky. And then the other thing they do is they highlight your unconsciousness, because you can be on your own. Like, that's kind of what celibacy is about. and why it's so popular in religious orders is because relationships are so distracting. And you can be on your own, and you can be all celibate, and you can think, oh, I've really got it together. It's I'm so peaceful. I'm so zen. It's all beautiful, And then you get into a relationship with somebody, and suddenly you're snapping at them, you're biting their head off, you're being jealous, you're being envious, you're feeling insecure. It's like, oh, I don't like this. I want to go back to my cave where I was all peaceful and serene, So that's the good thing about relationships. They highlight things that you would not know otherwise, And, that can get overwhelming, and relationships can be very destructive, and they're not easy. They're not easy at all. But, what else are you going to do with your life? It's all about becoming more conscious. So everything helps you in that. Everything helps you become more conscious, Sometimes you need a rest from it. Sometimes you need to withdraw a little bit, be on your own. But then, back into it, because it helps bring you deeper, deeper into love. Okay, so I hope that was a transitory one of those days where you feel like you're just about holding on. I hope that was just one of those days and you wrote to me and that was good. And I haven't waited all this time to, I responded to that person pretty much that day, just to send them a quick note, and then this is a longer answer. So I know it was just one of those days, but do write to me if you if it's not going well. Not that it's going to be on the podcast or anything, or I'll answer any questions, but just to know that, as I said before, the time of the guru is over, the time of the spiritual teacher is over. I'm none of those things, but I am a spiritual friend. And as a friend, you can write to me and tell me how it's going. And just the fact of seeing yourself doing that helps, and getting a bit of a response from someone who you don't know, but you also do know. Because if you're listening to me, you kind of know me a bit. Okay, that's all I've got for you this time. I trust you're well. I trust you're of good cheer. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.